Hello everyone, I'm Samora, the rum.
And I'm Julia, the wine.
Yeah, so we're an expat couple. I'm from Barbados, she's from Austria. We fell in love, then got married, then we moved over to this little country called Ireland. So we're living in Dublin, Ireland now, and we make videos about life as an expat and both of our cultures, our foods, our drinks, of course going places. So if you're interested in seeing a bunch of stuff on how to move to Ireland, how much it costs, and adjusting to life here, do subscribe. And if you're interested in stuff about Austria and Barbados and day trips, subscribe as well.
You're in the right place.
It's all here.
So, speaking of Austria, we just came back from a big family trip. Sam's family came over, my family was already there because they live in Austria, and we just rented a minibus and went around Austria. And obviously people asked a lot of questions about what our life in Dublin is like, and also a lot of my Austrian friends did. And one of the biggest questions that comes up is like, how expensive is it to live in Ireland? Because we've heard some crazy stories about the kind of money you pay for rent. So we thought, why not answer that question? We do love our finance and nerdiness with Excel sheets. And let's compare. What is more or less expensive in Austria and Ireland?
Yep. More or less Vienna versus Dublin.
Pretty much.
Of course, just like in our last video, we're not be quoting exact numbers as we speak, but they'll pop up through editing magic, or more like me clicking mouse buttons in post. So you'll see those pop up, and of course, the exact figures, we're going to have it linked in a blog article below.
So first up, one of the biggest questions is always about the food. And especially the concerned grandparents asking, but are you getting this in Ireland? Can you get this? Can you get this? Mom even asking should we send some sweet potatoes? Just what can you even buy in the supermarket in Ireland? So it's not that bad. It's just that what we noticed when we went to Austria is there's a lot more choice in products, and even the range of products that you get in Austrian supermarkets. Even in the countryside, when we went to smaller villages, because we were traveling with a person who's gluten intolerant and lactose intolerant, and there were a lot of, surprisingly at least to me, a lot of choices, versus here with Ireland it's you kind of get the same brands over and over again no matter what store you go to. It ends up pretty much being the same thing.
Yeah, unless you go to a specialty store, that's really the only difference comes from.
So that already leads to the big question of, well, does it cost the same? Because if you do go to specialty stores to get some of the stuff, it'll be more expensive. But generally overall, the EU did a study, if you want to get super nerdy, about the different food costs in different countries. And Ireland and Austria are relatively the same. What we did notice though, and I tried to dig a bit deeper, is that Ireland is a lot more expensive sometimes for food when you go out to eat. So going to restaurants, because we were in Austria and we were like, oh, let's order another drink, this is so cheap. Let's go out to eat again. It's who was the cook if it's that cheap to go out? And in comparison to what we're used to, is at one point we talked about it with a friend and told him a pint costs around €6 in Dublin, and he was scrolled through the menu and was in this place it's literally less than €1 to get almost the same amount. I'm what are you doing over there? So what I did find out in my research is that tax is very different in Ireland. In Austria, food is generally taxed 10% at a lower rate. Not so much in Ireland. Certain stuff you get, the really necessary stuff, you get a 0% tax rate, which is stuff like bread, tea bags, frozen fish and chips. I'm not making this up, this is literally from the revenue website. But everything else is taxed, and if you go out to eat, it's taxed at the full 23% a lot of the time. So taxes can ruin your going out to eat life.
So the next thing we noticed was the transport. Now, it almost feels like an unfair comparison. The mass transit of Austria is, arguably some of the best in Europe. You've got your trams, you've got your subways, you've got your overground,
And that's the non-Austrian person saying. I'm not holding a gun to his head to say this. It's like an unbiased review of the Austrian transport system.
That's why I said arguably try to be a bit more neutral. But anyways, so compare them. You actually realize that if you're a tourist visiting the country for like what you can get as your 24-hour pass or that sort of lovely things which you should pick up if you're just touring the city, it help you save money. Yeah, those are pretty much nearly equal, give or take. But the big difference comes in your yearly costs. I know in Dublin we've got some sort of saver
There's
thing.
like tax saver schemes for back with the taxes, where it makes it actually cheaper to get like a monthly or annual ticket. So those are the numbers you'll see below, because I couldn't actually find an annual ticket without that.
Yeah, we don't know too much about this stuff because usually we kind of walk to work, so I know nothing about the transport system, how much stuff actually costs. But unequivocally, when you've compared those two numbers for like possible cost for annual travel in Vienna versus Dublin, Vienna wins outright. It's almost comical to compare.
You can't beat €1 per day for a yearly ticket. So one of the most interesting topics to people is, I guess, rent is for everyone interesting because everyone has to pay it unless you own your own home. But it's always a bit, at this point, comical to us because we've just resigned ourselves to the fact that rent is absurd in Dublin. So it's kind of comical for us whenever we tell Austrians how much we pay, because they go through the same facial process where that's not even the first thing. So you can almost see the thoughts where they go like, did I hear that number right? No, that can't be right. So they look at you like, did you just do that number? And you're like, that's how much we pay for 29 square meters too. And you're just like, no, she must have said a different number. It's like, what? And then it's just like, boom, as they realize, yes, that is in fact the number we pay for 29 square meters in Dublin, which in Austria, in Vienna even, you could get like a multiple bedroom flat for that. It's not a secret that Dublin has a housing crisis. It's like, if you go to comparison sites like Numbeo, it'll literally tell you the rent in Dublin is 95% higher than in Vienna, which is a depressing difference. It's just a fact you gotta accept when you move here, that the rent in the current climate is absurd.
Of course, naturally with these very high rental prices, you gotta be wondering, how are you able to afford them? Which brings us to salaries. Now, all the research for salaries, etc., that for the average earning salary that people get. Ooh, before I continue with that, small tidbit about salaries and Austria versus Ireland. Did you know Austria gets 14 salaries per year? Yes, you heard that right. It's more than the number of months in a year. You get extra salary. Dublin, you just have to stick with normal 12. So, one more point for Vienna and Austria on a whole. But pretty much, as it's been said time and time again, mostly Dublin is turned into kind of like a tech hub city. So it's mostly people who are in the more tech-oriented jobs that seem to be able to afford these prices. So even though the average cost for the the average salary for the two, countries may be similar, when it comes to actually living in the capital and how much you may get paid for the same job, you get more in Dublin, but the living costs kind of cuts it out. So salary is usually higher, more people can afford the salary, but the other expenses kind of balance it out. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I think I could kind of like call this one a draw until we actually experience or get more information, because
it's very hard to compare. So the numbers you see here, they are already the net. So that's after tax. Because to be fair, Austria has 40% tax. That's shocking to some. I know it sounds absurd, but still has enough left over to compare with Dublin. Well, Ireland, because that's where the other thing comes in. You only have, at least very easily to find statistics on country level, And in Ireland, the salaries can be entirely different. If you're in a different part of Ireland that's not Dublin, it's like even rent. It's an entirely different world. There's Dublin prices, and then there's the rest of Ireland, which is an entirely different story.
Yeah, though unfortunately I've heard some cities are catching up, so hopefully it remains just Dublin and doesn't spread like a disease to the entire country. So, really, in the end, a city is more about the vibe and the lifestyle and what you can get out of it. Sure, mostly on paper, it's very much easier to live in Vienna. Oh, especially
because
if
it's
you
the most livable city in the world, like literally by studies.
Yeah, I was waiting for that, you know. She was being so like, I'm being non-biased until that was like, nope. Remember, most livable city in the world. There's no comparison here.
Legitimate studies. I'll link it below. Legitimate studies, several years in a row, agree with me.
Until I know German to that level, you know, we'll get there. I don't start asking me how much German I know. Okay, I'm learning. Leave me alone. As I was saying, it just depends on the lifestyle you want from the city. Every city has its charms and so like that. And it's much more fun when you can actually afford to live there. So if you're thinking about, you know, moving to Dublin, the living costs, that's the main thing you gotta consider. If your salary can manage that, then you're fine. Come here, have a good crack, etc. at that. Insert a joke about the weather here. And if something's a bit scary for you, I know some German, or, you know, wouldn't mind living the language, that sort of thing. Vienna might be your bet.
I'm trying to say something funny here, but the only thing that pops into my head is that if you can also deal with people being very grumpy, because that's not a category on the most livable city for how grumpy or friendly the people are. Because in that regard, Dublin wins. I think all Austrians have to agree with me on that.
Well, you heard it from an Austrian herself. And with that, hey, if you liked the video, comment, subscribe. Actually, tell us which city is your favourite, if you've been to both, something like that. If you've missed out anything. And, of course, subscribe to the channel. We're going to do more stuff like this. Hey, we've compared Austria and Ireland. Maybe we need to do some comparisons with Ireland and Barbados. That sounds like fun. Wonder who's going to win there. Yeah, there are no losers, only winners. We're being positive here. Barbados. Yes, with that, I bid you adieu.
See you next time.
Bis später.